and developed by Naughty Dog.
Naughty Dog is a studio that has continually found ways to create new series that captivate their audience. They first got their name out there during the PlayStation 1 era. With Sony entering the gaming scene with their console, they needed mascot characters that would be connected to PlayStation. Naughty Dog provided that with Crash Bandicoot. Naughty Dog made 3 delightful platformers that players still enjoy to this day. They weren't afraid to try out other genres with their series, and with that we saw the awesome Crash Team Racing release on the PS1. While Sony left future installments of Crash Bandicoot to other developers, Naughty Dog set their eyes on a new series for the PS2. Jak and Daxter proved that Naughty Dog wasn't a one-trick pony, and that they could create another memorable set of characters and world. Jak and Daxter showed that Naughty Dog could not only provide good gameplay, but also a good story. Amy Hennig, who established herself as a great talent with the Legacy of Kain series, along with contributing to the success of Jak and Daxter, wanted to create a third-person shooter with platforming that focused on treasure hunting. She led a trilogy of games that fully captured PS3 players and showed what the console was capable of. The Uncharted series not only had great third-person gameplay, but they were able to create many sequences that felt like the player was playing an elaborate and cinematic action sequence. That gameplay and action was backed up with characters who were lovable, flawed, relatable, and funny. You can really feel the rapport between the characters in Uncharted, and they don't feel like they are acting. It feels completely real and genuine. Naughty Dog was really making a name for itself when it came to the cinematic quality of story and action with the PS3 era. But even after 3 Uncharted games, they were not done. They had one more game that they were working on while they were developing Uncharted 3. They wanted to tackle a darker story with morally gray characters and capture the brutality of it. Naughty Dog surprised us all with the announcement of their game. Once this game got into players' hands, it proved to be the perfect swan song for the PS3 era. I present to you a look back at The Last of Us. On October 13th, 2009, Naughty Dog captured the PS3's audience with their excellent sequel, Uncharted 2. Uncharted 2 improved on the prior entry in every way. The campaign was longer and provided players with memorable scripted action sequences that felt like elaborate Hollywood action scenes that essentially made the player feel like they were playing a cutscene. The campaign expanded on the characters by introducing new heroes and villains, along with providing more depth to the established characters. But Naughty Dog was not satisfied with just outdoing their last story mode. They wanted to provide players with even more value by introducing multiplayer and co-op options. Uncharted 2 was an impressive package, and it did not disappoint. At the time of this release, Naughty Dog began to figure out what their next games were going to be. It was at this time that Naughty Dog split its studio into 2 teams. One team would be led by Amy Hennig to work on the third entry in the Uncharted series, and the other would be led by Neil Druckmann to work on a completely new project for the studio. The goal was to expand their studio to deliver more quality games to PS3 players. While the Uncharted team was hard at work making another stellar installment in the series, the other team was working on the PS3's Swan song, and this would be called The Last of Us.
I need something smuggled out of the city.
Just cargo, Joel.
I just want some simple gear enough to set me on my way.
I reckon it's got something to do with that girl.
It's got everything to do with that little girl.
While Naughty Dog began development on The Last of Us in 2009, the story for the game started with the writer-director Neil Druckmann when he was a college student in 2004. At that time, Neil was influenced from games like Eco to graphic novels like Sin City and films like The Night of the Living Dead. He was asked by his professor to come up with a conceptual idea to pitch to George Romero. The initial pitch was centered around a cop who would protect a young girl in a world of zombies. The cop had a heart condition, so there would be points in the story where the player would need to take control of the young girl. Neil wanted to flip the protector and protected roles throughout the story. Neil's pitch wasn't picked up by his professor. After he became a programmer at Naughty Dog, Neil wanted to revisit this story again. He explored taking these characters and turning it into a comic book. At this time, the characters had changed somewhat, with the cop being now a criminal who had lost his daughter, and then he meets a young girl and becomes her protector. In this version of the story, it would focus on the criminal protecting the girl, and in the end, she would help save him after he has been captured. When Neil brought this idea to a publisher, they didn't love it and they rejected his offer. As Neil worked at Naughty Dog, he became friends with the game director for the Uncharted games, Bruce Straley. Neil shared his ideas with Bruce, and the two of them started collaborating. They discussed having the girl character be a mute, and she could only communicate through her actions with the player. The two of them were also interested in a fungus that turns ants into mindless zombies. So together they developed another pitch for these characters. The third pitch would have that fungus go from affecting ants to affecting humans the same way, resulting in zombies and having the civilization breaking down. This virus would only affect females, and the girl character would be the only one immune. The criminal cop protector would have the job of protecting her and getting her to a lab so that a cure could be developed. The two of them pitched this idea to Naughty Dog, and it was eventually rejected. But the two of them did not give up. In 2010, they presented their pitch for The Last of Us to Naughty Dog, and this version was approved and work began on it. As Neil said in an interview, that failure can lead to better answers. If one of his prior versions had gotten approved, then the overall story would have been weaker for it. Personally, I like to see this as a lesson on holding on to your initial idea and using opportunities through failure to better your story, along with collaborating to develop a better result.
Part of that team, and without like Amy Hennig bringing what she's brought to Naughty Dog and her own perfectionist mindset and her own dedication to characters, and you know, she also has the history of being a great game designer. So having conversations and the stuff day to day, working on Uncharted 2 with her was extraordinarily, I guess,
inspirational. Yeah. And like, I mean, for me, I started kind of really getting my feet wet on writing on Uncharted 1, working with Amy, so she played this mentor role for me, and a lot of the stuff I do and the principles I apply came from having worked with Amy.
While developing The Last of Us, both Bruce and Neil looked at a particular part in Uncharted 2 for inspiration. There's a part in Uncharted 2 where Nate is paired with Tenzin. Nate does not speak Tenzin's language, and Tenzin does not speak English. This sequence is very memorable and effective in that you see a relationship form through visual communication and actions. As a player, you felt the frustration as the two of them tried to work together, and to communicate better with each other, along with how in a short period of time they formed a bond, and so did the player with this new character. Bruce and Neil wanted to use this idea of creating a relationship through gameplay and apply it to The Last of Us. The Last of Us went through several changes before the final version was approved. There was one large constant: the relationship between a protector and a girl. Naughty Dog didn't want Joel to be Ellie's biological father, since they felt like that relationship would have nowhere to go. But if they have Joel start off in a similar position to the player, not knowing Ellie, then both Joel and the player will grow and care for her throughout the events of the narrative. Joel is a rather gray character that has shut himself off emotionally from the rest of the world, and most of what he does is so that he can survive. He also has one close friend, but other than that, he is alone and shut down. Ellie has no knowledge of the world outside of the quarantine zone, but she also has experienced loss and in many ways hurt by the world around her, but she still retains that childlike charm and wonder that is seen throughout the game. The goal was to have Joel and Ellie's relationship grow through their experiences. Joel learns to let her in, and Ellie matures as the story evolves. Naughty Dog wanted to make sure that while Ellie does need Joel's protection to survive, that she was also capable of protecting herself throughout the game. They wanted to give her some fight in her that anyone would have growing up in this brutal world. And along the way, they found moments of levity to break up the bleakness of the world, and a lot of that came from Ellie. Naughty Dog aimed to have the combat in The Last of Us to be less of a stop-and-pop shooter like in the Uncharted games, and focus more on the realism and the lethal and brutal nature of the world. They wanted players to ask how are they going to get through this, while providing the players with plenty of options to accomplish those encounters. The developers did this by having a variety of situations where the player would face off against enemies in a group. Some of them would be armed with guns or melee weapons, or it could just be one person with a long-range rifle or the infected enemies. The variety of the enemies would lend themselves to having different situations where the player needed to find the best way to use their resources at hand to defeat their enemies. Even how the player heals would be a decision. Unlike the Uncharted games, the player would need to use a medkit to heal, and this all takes time to use, leaving the player vulnerable. The developers also mentioned the use of shifting the balance of power through gameplay. This was done through the enemies and how they are armed, along with how many of them there are and how many resources the player has. If the player has a gun and ammo, they might play the game a bit differently and more aggressively, but if the player is low on ammo or doesn't have any, and the enemies have guns, then stealth might be the best approach. Which is why Naughty Dog wanted to focus on having dynamic stealth, where the player could continually have options in those encounters. This led to them not having a dedicated sticky cover system in the game. The player could still take cover, but they were not stuck to it. The limited resources and the graphic violence conveyed the desperation in the combat. This wasn't stylized, it was grounded. It was important for Naughty Dog to have Ellie in the gameplay space, but that the player would not need to babysit her. They did not want Ellie to break stealth for the player if they were choosing a stealth option, but Ellie would help the player in alerting them to nearby enemies or even attacking enemies that were trying to kill the player. They wanted Ellie to be capable as a character and a companion, but not one who would interfere with the gameplay. The ending of The Last of Us started out as something different than what we got in the final game. Originally, Joel was going to find himself captured and in a bad situation. He would be tortured and almost dead, and at this point it was up to Ellie to save him. The only way she could do that was to kill someone, and this would be the first time in the game where she killed anyone. Ultimately, Neil and Bruce found this ending to not work with the character arcs. This version of the ending was not used, and the two of them then worked to create the ending that we got in the final game. The Last of Us was going to be a departure for how Naughty Dog was approaching their stories by being more grounded. The story evolved over time, with Neil trying to get his vision made into something. Neil had a story he wanted to tell, and Bruce wanted to help bring that to life. Each of them were able to bring something unique to the table with their experiences to bring this now unified vision to life. The two of them spearheaded this new team at Naughty Dog to create something that was very different and special for the studio. And while Amy Hennig was not involved with The Last of Us, the two of them credit her as being a source of inspiration for the project. On June 14th, 2013, The Last of Us was released to the world.
Monday at work, huh?
What are you still doing up? It's late.
Oh, crud, what time is it?
It's way past your bedtime.
But it's still today.
Honey, please not right now. I do not have the energy for this.
Here,
What's this?
your birthday? You kept complaining about your broken watch. So I figured, you know. You like it?
Honey, this is... It's
What?
nice, but I think it's stuck. It's not...
What? No. Oh, ha ha.
Where did you get the money for this?
Drugs. I sell hardcore drugs.
Oh, good. You started helping out with the mortgage then.
Yeah, you wish.
Later that night, Sarah wakes up from a call from her uncle. She searches the house trying to find her dad, but can't. She goes into his den, and Joel comes running in. Joel says that one of their neighbors is sick and trying to attack them. The neighbor comes crashing through the screen, and Joel shoots him to protect Sarah. The two of them then rush outside to meet Tommy. Chaos from an outbreak is happening all around them. Infected people are attacking others like animals. Our group then makes an effort to get out of the city. They get pretty far until they are hit by another car, and after this they make a mad dash on foot. Tommy stays behind to hold some of the infected off as Joel tries to carry Sarah to safety.
It's okay, baby. We're safe. We're safe. Hey, we need help.
Stop!
Please. It's my daughter. I think her leg is broken.
Stop right there!
Okay. We're not sick.
Got a couple of civilians in the outer perimeter. Please advise.
Daddy, what about Uncle Tommy?
We're gonna get you to safety and go back for him, okay?
Sir, there's a little girl. But... Yes, sir.
Somebody, we've just been through hell. Okay, we just need... no. Sarah. Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. God. Listen to me. I know this hurts, baby. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby. I know it hurts. Come on, baby, please. I know, baby. I know. Sarah. Baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on. No. No. No, no, please. Please, please don't. Please.
We then pick up our story 20 years later, with Joel now working with a friend named Tess. They do different smuggling jobs to try and survive. They decided to go after Robert, who owes them guns. They chase down Robert and find out that he sold their guns to a group known as the Fireflies. Joel and Tess run into Marlene, the leader of the Fireflies. Marlene offers a deal: smuggle something out of the city and she will give them back their guns. Joel and Tess soon find out that Marlene wants them to smuggle a girl out of the city. The job is to take Ellie to the capital, where a group of Fireflies will be waiting. On their way there, they get stopped by the military.
Don't do anything stupid.
Move.
Turn around, on your knees. You scan him, I'll call it in.
All right. Put your hands on your head.
This is Ramirez at Sector 12, requesting pickup for 3 stragglers. Understood.
Look the other way. We can make this worth your while.
Shut up. Tired of this shit.
Mm-hmm.
What's the ETA?
Couple minutes.
Oh, fuck. I thought we were just gonna hold him up or something.
Holy shit. Look.
Jesus Christ. Marlene set us up? Why the hell are we smuggling an infected girl?
I'm not infected.
No? Was this lying?
I can explain.
You better explain fast.
Look at this.
I don't care how you got infected.
It's 3 weeks old.
No, everyone turns within 2 days, so you stop bullshitting.
It's 3 weeks. I swear. Why would she set you up?
Our group continues to fight through the city to protect Ellie. When our group gets to the meetup point, the Fireflies are found dead. It is revealed that Tess was bit on their way here by an infected. Tess begs Joel to take Ellie to the Fireflies. She thinks that since Ellie was bit 3 weeks ago and her recent bite looks worse than Ellie's, then there might be something true to this immunity. Tess's last wish is for Joel to take Ellie to his brother Tommy. Tommy used to be a member of the Fireflies and he will know where to find them. Joel has no interest in this crusade and only does this for Tess. In order to get to Tommy, Joel figures that they will need to get a car, so their first stop is to check in with a guy named Bill who owes Joel a few favors. Joel and Ellie help Bill find some gear so that they can fix up a car. After battling the infected in the area, Bill is able to fix a car for them and they head towards Tommy. They get pretty far and then they are ambushed by hunters. Now Joel and Ellie are in a city surrounded by enemies. They make their way to a hotel and get split up along the way. As Joel is fighting for his life, Ellie finds him and saves his life. Joel gives Ellie a gun and the two of them work together to fight the hunters. They later meet up with 2 brothers, Henry and Sam. They are also trying to get out of the city and decide to work together. They plan to leave the city at night, and after overcoming several obstacles, all 4 of them make it out alive. They eventually come to a small town that is full of hunters. Joel takes out the sniper and protects Henry, Sam, and Ellie. The infected come pouring into the area and our group escapes the area. Our heroes get a moment to rest, but that ends fast as it's revealed that Sam was bit and is now infected.
That smells good.
Good morning.
Where's Sam?
I'll let him sleep in for once.
Oh.
Well, if you want him to join us, you can go wake his ass up.
Okay. Sam? Sam!
What the hell? Shit, he's turning!
That's my fucking brother!
Screw it!
Shit!
Ellie? Ellie, are you all right?
Oh my god.
Sam?
Oh no.
Sam?
Henry? Ellie, stay there. Henry?
What have you done?
I'm gonna get that gun from you, okay? Oh, okay, easy.
This is your fault.
This is nobody's fault, Henry.
It's all your fault!
Henry! Henry, no!
Some time has passed, and now Joel and Ellie are close to meeting up with Tommy. At this point, Joel finds himself caring for Ellie, but he doesn't fully let his emotional wall down. He is still damaged from losing his daughter 20 years ago. Plan is to bring Ellie to Tommy and then leave her there so that Tommy can then take her to the Fireflies. Tommy agrees to help Joel, but Ellie runs away after learning that Joel wants to abandon her. Joel and Tommy chase after Ellie, and they eventually find her at an abandoned house.
What do you want from me?
Admit that you wanted to get rid of me the whole time.
Tommy knows this area
Oh,
better
fuck
than... Well, I'm sorry. I trust him better than I trust myself.
Stop with the bullshit. What are you so afraid of? That I'm gonna end up like Sam? I can't get infected. I can take care of myself.
How many close calls have we had?
Well, we seem to be doing all right so far.
And now you'll be doing even better with Tommy.
Not her, you know.
What?
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie?
And
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel. But I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
You're right. You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad. And we are going our separate ways.
After reflecting on everything, Joel makes the decision to take Ellie to the Fireflies rather than Tommy. Tommy tells them that the Fireflies should be located at a university, and they make their way there. They search the entire compound and cannot find any of them. They find a recording that says that the Fireflies have left this location and that they are located at the St. Mary's Hospital in Salt Lake City. So our group decides to head there, but a group of hunters shows up and attacks them. Joel is wounded in their escape, and it's up to Ellie to now become the protector. She helps Joel escape the compound, and then we jump to the winter. Ellie is hunting for food and encounters a man named David. He offers her medicine for Joel if he can have the deer that she shot. It is later revealed that David is part of the same group that attacked Joel and Ellie at the university. Ellie is able to escape and bring Joel the medicine. Ellie administers the medicine, and then she heads out to protect Joel from David's group, who is now hunting them down. Ellie is then captured, and then Joel wakes up. Joel encounters some of David's group and captures 2 of them.
What the?
You wait here. Now, the girl. Is she alive?
What girl? I don't know no girl.
Fuck! Focus right here, right here. I'll pop your goddamn knee off. The girl.
She's alive. She's David's newest pet.
Where?
In the town. In the town.
Now you're gonna mark it on the map. And it better be the same exact spot your buddy points to. Mark it.
It's right there. You can verify it. Go ask him. Go on. I tell you, I ain't lying. I ain't... Fuck you, man. He told you what you wanted. I ain't telling you shit.
That's all right. I believe him.
No, wait!
Ellie escapes David's captivity and she faces off against David to survive. Ellie manages to kill David and Joel finally finds Ellie. Then we jump to the spring and Joel and Ellie are close to the hospital to meet up with the Fireflies. The two of them get pretty close on their own, but the dangerous water in the tunnel almost kills them both. Ellie passes out and Joel tries to wake her up. At the same time, unknown soldiers are closing in on them and knock out Joel.
Welcome to the Fireflies. Sorry about that. They didn't know who you were.
And Ellie?
She's all right. They brought her back. You came all this way. How'd you do it?
It was her. She fought like hell to get here. Maybe it was meant to be.
I lost most of my crew crossing the country. I pretty much lost everything. And then you show up and somehow we find you just in time to save her. Maybe it was meant to be.
Take me to her.
You don't have to worry about her anymore. We'll take care
I
of her.
worry. Just let me see her, please.
You can't. She's being prepped for surgery.
The hell do you mean, surgery?
The doctors tell me the cordyceps, the growth inside her, has somehow mutated. It's why she's immune. Once they remove it, they'll be able to reverse engineer a vaccine. A vaccine.
But it grows all over the brain.
It does.
Find someone else.
There is no one else.
Listen, you were gonna show me where she...
Stop. I get it. But whatever it is you think you're going through right now is nothing to what I have been through. I knew her since she was born. I promised her mother I would look after her.
Then why are you letting this happen?
Because this isn't about me, or even her. There is no other choice here.
Yeah, you keep telling yourself that bullshit.
March him out of here. He tries anything, shoot him. Don't waste this gift, Joel.
Joel makes a choice to save Ellie from the Fireflies. He reaches Ellie, she is still unconscious, and one of the doctors threatens Joel and he has given no other choice but to kill him. Joel grabs Ellie and makes for the exit.
You can't save her. Even if you get her out of here, then what? How long before she's torn to pieces by a pack of clickers? That is, if she hasn't been raped and murdered first.
It ain't for you to decide.
It's what she'd want. And you know it. Look. You can still do the right thing here. She won't feel anything.
What the hell am I wearing?
Just take it easy. Drugs are still wearing off.
What happened?
We found the fireflies. Turns out there's a whole lot more like you, Ellie. People that are immune. There's dozens, actually. Ain't done them a damn bit of good, neither. They've stopped looking for a cure. I'm taking us home. I'm sorry.
Wait! Let me go. Please.
You just come after her.
Hey, wait. Back in Boston? Back when I was bitten? I wasn't alone. My best friend was there. And she got bit too. We didn't know what to do. So, she says, let's just wait it out. You know, we can be all poetic and just lose our minds together. I'm still waiting for my turn.
Ellie.
Her name was Riley, and she was the first to die. And then it was Tess. And then Sam.
None of that is on you.
Oh, you don't understand.
I struggled for a long time with surviving. And no matter what, you keep finding something to fight for. Now, I know that's not what you want to hear right now.
Swear to me. Swear to me that everything that you've said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
And that's the story of The Last of Us. I think The Last of Us has one of the most effective intros I have experienced. It hooks you right away and it pulls you in by capturing you with its narrative. At the start, we see Joel and his daughter Sarah. We get a little bit of banter between them and we see their relationship. The humor makes them relatable and Sarah is innocent, funny, and sweet. Once the infected start attacking and Joel and Sarah try to escape the city, we are right there with Joel wanting to protect his daughter. In a very short period of time, we have an emotional buy-in with these characters and do not want anything bad to happen to them. Essentially, if the first birthday scene with them did not work as well as it did, we wouldn't care as much about these characters and the rest of the intro would not have worked. Sarah's death is not only shocking, but a major story component for Joel. This effectively sets the tone for the game. After Sarah's death, I was fully invested in this game's story and I wanted to see where it took me. The beginning of the summer section shows how Joel is a great character. The game does a good job of showing how Joel is acting more out of the need to survive rather than the intent of doing something evil. When he finally meets up with Ellie, he is not interested in the job to transport her, but Tess talks him into it. Throughout the time we have with Joel, Ellie, and Tess, we we see how Tess only sees Ellie as a job and is looking at the reward. We get glimpses of how Joel sees his daughter Sarah and Ellie. I really like how we see an emotionally guarded Joel who does not want to let Ellie in because of his loss with Sarah. But while Ellie has a mouth like a sailor, she still has that genuine sweetness that one would expect from a kid. There's one moment right before the three of them reach the capital where Ellie's childlike enjoyment of the sunrise gives Joel some comfort and we see him smile. Tess notices this and reminds him that this is a job, nothing more. I love the work that they did to show Joel as a damaged man and how Ellie gets Joel to open up. In a very bleak world, this relationship that grows between Joel and Ellie is a continuous bright spot, as we watch it grow into a sort of father-daughter relationship. Through Ellie, Joel is able to accept and overcome his daughter's death while also finding a new reason to live through taking care and protecting Ellie. I like to look at this game as saying that even when you're at your worst, to not give up and look for something to live for. And this relationship is developed slowly throughout the entire game, so that when we get to many of the big moments, they feel real and earned. We see this a lot through their growing pains as they learn to work together. We get small parts like the sunrise where we see Joel starting to care for Ellie, and then other situations where she saves his life by shooting a hunter. His initial reaction to Ellie saving his life is not so thankful, and I think this is because he feels bad that she had to do that and take a life, especially since she is so young. It is sort of like Ellie is being robbed of her innocence and childhood in a way because of how the world currently is. But when Ellie and Joel are up against a large group of hunters, he trusts Ellie to provide him with cover from up top, and Ellie gets her thank you from him. I love these moments. It shows how they care for each other, along with how it's not so black and white with them learning to work together as a team. The best of this is when Ellie learns that Joel's trying to pawn her off to his brother. Joel struggles with Ellie because he cares about her, but there's a part of him that still can't get over Sarah and does not want to fully let Ellie in. But after the two of them have an argument, Joel makes his decision to not let Ellie go with Tommy. First we see Ellie letting it all out and not holding back. This is a great scene since Joel internalizes a lot and he needed to have a lot of this stuff said out loud. And when Joel tells Tommy that he will be taking Ellie to the university, Joel is 100% in. I also like how side characters show different aspects of the world. Bill is an interesting character. He isn't a people person, he's paranoid, and he's a bit funny at times. His subplot hints at a dark and depressing life for himself. The only way he feels safe is by himself, and he can't trust anyone. And part of that is because he felt betrayed by someone who was close to him. There's no hope there. On the other hand, Tommy's settlement is in the exact opposite. People coming together for a common goal. His whole section is filled with hope as you see what his settlement is trying to do. Tommy has a wife and it shows Joel a different path. I feel like I would be doing the story a disservice if I didn't bring up the ambush section. From the music to the tension, this whole sequence is great. Prior to this, Joel and Ellie finally get a car to make their journey quicker, but they run into a hunter ambush. The hunters stage it like they need help, but Joel can see right through it. The whole thing is intense, and with the gameplay section that follows, it's really awesome. One of my favorite parts about this is how it says a lot about Joel's character. Joel recognizes it because he has probably been on both sides of this situation. It further shows the gray area that Joel's character lives in. The beginning part in the winter section has some excellent tension between Ellie and David. Ellie doesn't trust David, but he can provide her with the medicine for Joel. They both don't trust each other, but they need to work together to fight the infected. After the victory over the infected, David reveals to Ellie that Joel and Ellie killed his men back at the university. The beginning part does a solid job of establishing David's group as the villains for this section, along with giving a face to that group. As a bonus, this is the first time we see Ellie by herself trying to survive on her own. There are so many great character moments showing her being a badass and smart. I really like how she uses her bite mark to her advantage to get the leg up on her enemies, and it has some of the most memorable Ellie moments here.
I'm infected! I'm infected!
Really?
So are you. Right there. Roll up my sleeve. Look at it!
I'll play along.
What'd you say? Everything happens for a reason, right?
What the hell is that?
She would have turned by now. It can't be real.
Looks pretty fucking real to me.
You're special.
Oh.
When we start the spring section, we see how Ellie is scarred from her experience with the cannibals and how Joel is thinking about the future with Ellie. He talks about different things that he can teach her once this mission is complete. As Joel and Ellie are reaching the hospital, they both get pulled underwater and Ellie passes out. Joel is trying to get Ellie breathing again, but they are stopped by the soldiers and Joel is hit on the head. When Joel wakes up, he is face to face with Marlene. The fungus that is related to the infection grows on the brain, and she explains that they need to operate on Ellie to extract it and perform tests on it to hopefully come up with a cure. Ellie is already being prepared for surgery. Joel, and probably not Ellie as well, did not realize that this was going to cost Ellie's life. And here is where the dilemma comes into play. Does Joel let Ellie die so that there's a chance that a cure could be made for the infection? Or does he save Ellie and get her out of the facility while also potentially damning anyone who gets infected going forward? What is also interesting about this is how the game does present this as a chance to make the cure, and that it isn't a definitive thing. So there could be a situation where Ellie dies, they run the tests, and there's no successful cure that is made. The other interesting aspect is that when Ellie goes to the hospital, she is unconscious and is unable to know that these tests will result in her dying. So the choice only comes down to Joel. His choice to save Ellie is a selfish one, as he is choosing her over everyone else, and at the same time it completely fits his character. This choice is also relatable in that could you make this choice to essentially sacrifice a loved one to die to save the needs of the many? To add to all of this, after Joel saves Ellie, he lies to her and tells her that the Fireflies gave up looking for a cure and that there are many more people like her, adding another layer to the dilemma. First, would you save Ellie or let her die for a cure? And if you saved her, would you tell her the truth? The ending both provides satisfying closure to the story while also leaving it open enough to leave you wondering how things would play out, especially if you were in Joel's position. The ending is really great, and I feel like the story with Joel and Ellie should be a one and done. This is a situation where I would not like to see this story continued, unless the writers really knew where they wanted to take these characters in an interesting direction with good execution. But this isn't the Uncharted series where you could put those characters into different treasure hunting situations. The Last of Us was a story about Joel and Ellie, and one that provided an engaging journey with a great ending. The Last of Us's combat boils down to stealth and action-oriented areas. Most of the game is centered around areas where you can tackle the enemies how you want. If you have the materials, you can set up some nail bomb traps, get up close and personal to save on ammo and supplies, or you can use your firearms to really end the situation quickly. The other areas will have you facing off against foes in a more direct manner, with less or no options for stealth, and you need to really rely on your firearms and other weapons in open combat. These areas are fun because of the impact from the firearms along with the brutal melee, but the gameplay really shines when you are in areas that allow for stealth. Part of the reason these areas are substantially better are from the variability from those situations. Most of those will have human enemies trying to hunt you down, or infected enemies that need to try to figure out where you are, and then you need to figure out how to best use your resources to defeat them. In the best of these situations, you can tackle them very differently depending on how you approach it. Along with this, the stealth is less rigid and a bit more forgiving, as once you get caught, you can try and run away and break line of sight to be able to attempt another stealth try. Or if your attempt at stealth fails, you can go a more direct route. It comes down to player choice and your best means of survival. This is where the survival horror elements are present with the inventory management, as you are trying to use your items and ammo when they are needed most. In these combat encounters, you will feel like you are simply trying to use what you have to complete the encounter. You usually have limited supplies and you need to figure out how to best use them on your current encounter, but you do not want to exhaust all of your options so that you're less prepared for the following one. And depending on whether you are fighting human enemies or the infected, your strategy will change. With human enemies, you can take them as human shields, and normal stealth takedowns will work on them. But for infected clickers, they cannot be killed in close corridor stealth unless you have a shiv. The bow and arrow is great to use to give you ranged stealth options. Human enemies usually can be hit anywhere with the arrow and they will instantly go down. But if you're up against a clicker, you need to make sure to aim for the head. Arrows can also be used as a way to distract enemies if you hit a wall, and if they do not break, you can pick them back up again and use them in another encounter. Bottles and bricks can be found in the environment as well, and they become your best friends. They provide you with great distraction by throwing them, but they can also be used as weapons. If you throw a bottle at an enemy, that will stun them, and then you can take them down quicker with a quick melee attack. Bricks can be used to outright kill people with 3 hits from a brick, including a clicker. Using the bottles and the bricks can help you save on your valuable supplies. I touched on a few options, but you get many different weapons to use in combat. You have a nice arsenal of firearms like a pistol, a revolver, a sawed-off shotgun, a pump-action shotgun, a hunting rifle, and a few others. The shooting is a lot slower than a normal third-person shooter, but the impact of your shots is devastating. The shotguns are the most satisfying as they will cause a lot of dismemberment. The Molotovs are really useful for the infected enemies as they will run through the fire and they will light themselves on fire because of it, saving you on additional ammo. The melee hits are satisfying to do because of the camera angles that are used when you hit something. The camera takes a more personal angle with it getting close to those hits so that you can really feel each hit that you're dishing out. The melee takedowns are both brutal and satisfying as you attack with your bare hands or a melee weapon. Axes and machetes provide the most devastating results, and the resourcefulness with unarmed kills never gets old with you slamming faces into different surfaces. Your approach to combat encounters will change depending on the enemies you're fighting. When fighting with the human enemies, you need to be aware of the enemies with guns, rushers with the melee weapons, and ones that use Molotov cocktails. The firearm-based enemies can take you out really quick, especially if they have a shotgun. The melee enemies will try to close the distance to attack you, but their actual attacks are not really what you need to be concerned with. Melee attackers will force you to engage them, and in many cases you have to leave the safety of your cover to take them out, leaving you open to be shot at by other enemies. So once you identify a melee rusher, it's best to either relocate or take them out as quickly as possible. Enemies with Molotov cocktails can take you out really fast, but if you shoot them right before they throw it, you can kill them in one hit, and in many cases kill additional enemies with one bullet. On the flip side of things, you have the infected enemies, and I really enjoyed many of these encounters since the gameplay goes full survival horror. The rushers are pretty easy to take out one-on-one, but can be a problem as they usually attack you in groups. The bloaters are slow and deadly at range, but an explosive or two with a few shots can take them out quickly. The highlight of the infected are the clickers. These enemies cannot be attacked head-on unless you stun them first or attack them before they are alerted. In your first few encounters with these enemies, they can be quite terrifying. I want to praise the developers who made the sound for them. They are extremely unsettling, and the clickers are a true highlight of the infected enemies. When you are not in combat areas, you will be exploring environments for supplies. You will have limited supplies, so you need to figure out how to get by with what you find. As you are exploring, you will find supplements that you can use to improve Joel with more health, faster crafting, and with new ways to use the shiv. When you find different supplies, you can use them to craft different explosives, smoke grenades, medkits, shivs for quicker stealth takedowns, and more. The game is very linear, but there are plenty of side rooms and areas that give you extra supplies. Another thing to note is how the areas feel like they were lived in and now long abandoned. The exploring provides a nice break from the intense combat. Between how the combat works, along with the exploration, the game does a good job at conveying the environment and the story along with that intended survival horror experience. The inventory management and limited supplies puts you in the mindset of needing to use what supplies you have for the best outcome. A missed shot from a gun in another game wouldn't really be noticed, but here a missed shot could mean a loss of a very valuable resource. There's never really a point in the game where you feel like you're going into an encounter well prepared, but rather you're just trying to get by and defeat those enemies. The story's resourcefulness is fully represented in every combat encounter. In this way, there's no disconnect between the dire situation of the story with the actual gameplay. You feel that desperation from the narrative in the gameplay because that's what each combat encounter feels like. While I generally do not have any issues with this game, I do want to bring up a few areas worth mentioning. In many instances, you will have an AI partner, either Ellie or another ally. While you are in stealth, the AI does not break stealth for you, even if they are seen by the enemies, and if the enemy is right in front of them, the enemies will not recognize your ally until they see you first. This can break the immersion of the moment because it looks a bit silly when it happens. On the other hand, it would be really annoying for the player if the AI broke stealth for the player, especially since the player has no control over the AI. Now, the developers could have allowed for some sort of commands to be issued to the AI, but I do not think that squad commands would fit this game and would come across as clunky and unneeded. So while these situations can break immersion, I prefer them to actually needing to micromanage an AI ally. Sometimes the melee hit detection can be a bit off, with the player hitting the melee button and the attack not connecting with the enemy. I only had a few instances of this, and it usually happened on different elevations, like on stairs or in certain cover spots. Sometimes the stealth can be a bit silly, with having a large amount of enemies knocked out in one location as you wait for each guard to come there and you take them out. All of these are minor and more so things I noticed while I was playing the game. The Last of Us is memorable from its story to its gameplay. I love this game. Left Behind takes place before the main game, and we get to experience the event that Ellie referenced at the end of the main game. Overall, I like the present-day combat parts with Ellie, but I found the story to be largely unneeded. For the gameplay, it's roughly the same stuff as the main game, but there's one big thing that I like here, was that how you could use the infected as a means to fight other humans. You can create noises and cause the infected to attack other enemies for you. This was not in the main game, and I really like the situations that were here and Left Behind. When it comes to the story parts and providing additional background on Ellie, I found this stuff to be fine, but really something that was not needed. I liked how there was some mystery before the events of the main game, and it made her comments about her friend really make us feel like Joel in that moment at the end. But I also understand the need for knowing more and having more time with these characters. I by no means think that this DLC is bad. It's well made and I really enjoyed it from a gameplay standpoint. When it comes to The Last of Us, I felt like the main game was this perfect experience with a great story and ending that provides both closure and discussion. This was not a game that I wanted more story on Joel and Ellie or even a sequel. If they were ever to make another game in this universe, I would like to see someone else's story in this setting. A lot of this is how the story is told, and it doesn't really open itself up for additional sequels like in their Uncharted series. And then there's always the risk that they make a sequel with Joel and Ellie and it isn't up to standards set by this game. When most people talk about The Last of Us, I feel like the multiplayer is usually left out of the discussion. I understand the focus on the excellent single player, but I do think that this side option is pretty fun, even though I'm not that good at it. At the start of the multiplayer, you choose whether you are going to be part of the Hunters or the Fireflies. What you do in the multiplayer essentially feeds back into your clan. You try to earn the amount of supplies needed to keep everyone good. If you fail to do so, then people will get hungry or die. Different events happen to your clan, and that results in different objectives to complete, so you can do that to help out your clan. The multiplayer has 3 modes: Survivors, Supply Raid, and Interrogation. Supply Raid works like a team deathmatch with limited spawns. Survivors is round-based, where you don't have any respawns and you need to take out the other team. Interrogation is where you need to interrogate a few people and then open up the opposing team's lockbox. Defending and attacking the lockbox is the best part of that match. What makes the multiplayer interesting and different is the use of stealth along with limited supplies and crafting items on the fly while in matches. It is also very focused on teamwork, so playing with randoms can be fun, but it requires some communication, so it's best played with friends. While in matches, you can find supplies for your craftable items along with being able to craft materials to improve your guns and armor. I really like this aspect to go into a match with your loadout, and that you can also find supplies there that then betters your loadout that you're bringing in. You can use these points however you see fit, depending on the weapons you want to use, the skills, or the upgrades to weapons like a silencer. Overall, the multiplayer action is pretty fun. I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on the multiplayer, but I wanted to give a brief mention to it here because when people are not using the overpowered weapons in it, it's really enjoyable. Through the PS1 and PS2 eras, Naughty Dog showed their consistent quality in making both sequels and new worlds to enjoy. This hit another level during the PS3 era with their excellent Uncharted trilogy, and then ending their time with the PS3 with a masterpiece. The Last of Us managed to tell a story that fully captured the player's attention and emotions with Joel and Ellie. The strength of the story was from their character development, along with seeing their father-daughter relationship grow. We experienced their hardships, cared when their lives were on the line, and took comfort in the lighter moments. The world was bleak and brutal while also having many positive messages like hope, healing, and finding something to live for. The gameplay was equally exciting as it put the player in tough situations where fighting enemies and succeeding felt like an act of desperation. Through the resource management, variety in the environments and enemies, the game kept the player on their toes. The story provided that narrative motivation, and the gameplay furthered that brutal world that those characters lived in. The Last of Us is a perfect self-contained story about Joel and Ellie, and while the ending does create discussion on wondering what happened to these characters and where they ended up, I think the beauty of it is how it provides both closure and an avenue for discussion. And as much as I love this game, I would rather they never make a sequel to Joel and Ellie's story. It isn't needed, and it would run the risk of ruining the lightning in a bottle that they had with this game. I think The Last of Us worked because the story was continually worked on and bettered over several years, along with benefiting from collaborating with top-tier talent. The Last of Us was the perfect swan song to the PS3 era.